talking to people in the ghetto, one dealer's name always came up when talking about crack's popularity. Freeway Ricky Ross became known as the Walmart of crack. Ricky's story has become as legendary as Tony Montana and Scarface, but with an even more bizarre twist. Ricky, who is currently serving time in the Texarkana Federal Prison, is scheduled for release in 2013. The prison denied me access with a camera, so I started interviewing Ricky over the prison payphone.
You know, a lot of people don't know what it's like to come in a house and there's nothing to eat. You know, to go to a supermarket and walk through the store and eat out of the cookies and things of that nature just to have something to eat. Cocaine came along, you know, and gave me a new horizon, I would say.
There's a new epidemic. Smokable cocaine, otherwise known as crack.
I remember clearly one day in the late 80s, every single news network simultaneously running an identical news alert about the new, incredible, powerful, unbelievably cheap drug that was to sweep the nation.
This is crack cocaine.
Soon, every single black person living in the ghetto would sell his own mother for another hit of crack cocaine. It was like watching a strategically engineered ad campaign. Talk about perfect product placement. Did we mention it's cheap and strong and very addictive? Only $5 now, so stay away from it.
Let there be no mistake. This stuff is poison.
I know this is nothing to joke about, but Rick is your all-American opportunist. And as the media told us, crack was now the big new opportunity.
You know, we had houses where you basically would go up to the window and it would be served right out the window, kind of like the way McDonald's does it, I guess. Because we had houses in so many different locations. Basically, you know, I wanted a location. I wanted it to be convenient for the people, you know, where they wouldn't have to drive for. It was kind of like marketing, I guess you would say.
The gangs evolved, and the gangs were a great business venture. They're basically marketing tools. That's really what they were. And they were quietly promoted behind the scenes.
And you tell yourself, I'll just take $10 or $5 and buy me a little hit to sustain myself, to hold myself off. But after you get that little hit, you want more, and you want more, and you want more. Then that's called chasing the rock.
Freeway Rick going down, people actually want to be like him because they don't think about drugs, they just think about the money.
But what about those people whose lives are still affected by the Los Angeles crack epidemic? Many people in Washington will tell you that the crack epidemic ended in the late 90s. But according to Sergeant Lou Daigle of the Los Angeles Police Department, crack sales are stronger than ever.
Basically, every gangbanger comes down here to make money.
Right.
Okay, they come down from the inner city, they come down from East LA, they come down from everywhere, all the different rival gangs, and very rarely, actually, is there a shooting between gang members.
Although Freeway Rick remains locked up, many people still blame him for crack's easy availability.
One time, I went over to this lady's house to drop her off some drugs, and it was the look that the little boy had in his eyes, you know, as if, man, you taking food out of our refrigerator. You know, we're not going to have anything to eat. And I thought about it, I said, man, I was putting him in the same position that I was running from. You know, I basically was running from poverty. That's basically how I got tied up in the drug business, because I never wanted to be a drug dealer, you know, when I was growing up. At one time, I even wanted to be a police officer or a firefighter.
Back in the 80s, the big concern was not terrorism, it was communism. The Iran-Contra affair was one of the biggest political scandals in U.S. history. Members of the Reagan administration, headed by Oliver North, engaged in the sale of arms to Iran. The proceeds from these illegal deals were being used to fund the Contras, a right-wing guerrilla group that Reagan referred to as his freedom fighters. The Contras were fighting the Soviet-backed Sandinistas for the domination of Nicaragua.
The Iran-Contra is very important in history. We have to remember the fact that Iran-Contra, its mandate was to investigate the sales of missiles to Iran.
Former DEA agent Celerino Castillo not only fought in the international effort of the American drug war, he also had the rare opportunity of carrying a camera and recording some of the regrettable actions of the DEA and CIA while they supported President Reagan and Oliver North's Contra movement.
George Bush Sr. came to Guatemala on January 13, 1986, and he approached me and asked me what I did there at the U.S. Embassy, what my job description was, and I told him I was a DEA agent working international narcotics investigations, and I told him, look, You know, we have gathered intelligence that the Contras are involved in drug trafficking down in El Salvador. And then he just smiled, shook my hand, and walked away from me. And it was then and there that I knew that my government knew that these atrocities were occurring.
They were so concerned about giving the guns to Iran and all that stuff. The question should have been asked about all that cocaine flying back over here.
In 1986, on American TV, we were all being fed a steady diet of,
"We're taking down the surrender flag that has flown over so many drug efforts. We're running up a battle flag.
This scourge will stop."
But regrettably, back in Central America and in the jungle,
I remember down in Central America, we were refueling planes full of cocaine coming into the U.S., and it was a CIA operation being run by the White House.
at the same time all of the cocaine from Nicaragua was flowing into the U.S., Freeway Ricky Ross was at his heyday.
The average week would at least be $2 to $3 million, almost guaranteed. Some days we would have $2 and $3 million days.
After Freeway Rick was arrested, an investigative journalist by the name of Gary Webb uncovered a link that connected him back to the Nicaraguan Contra movement.
I read Dark Alliance. I got a copy personally from Gary Webb himself. And to read the book, it was fascinating for me, you know, to find out that I was connected with the CIA and all these high-powered people up in the government.
Ricky Ross was just lucky. He just happened to get a source who was connected to the CIA.
For a long time in South Central, the buzzword was that the CIA was selling crack. I said, no, the CIA wasn't selling crack. The CIA was importing cocaine. Ricky Ross got it, turned it into crack, and he sold it.
According to Gary Webb's Dark Alliance, when Danilo Blandón was displaced from his home country of Nicaragua, he set off to America to raise money to aid the Contras in ridding his home from the invading Sandinistas. When Ricky Ross was introduced to Blandón, Blandón was in a position to create a pipeline of cocaine that he in turn gave to Ricky Ross on consignment.
Which I like the sound of that, you know, because I was always trying to get to the top anyway.
Suddenly, some major sources opened up for him. Danilo Blandón, Norwin Meneses, both of whom were tied to the CIA and the Contras, and Gary Webb did a masterful job of breaking those stories and proving with documents that that was the case.
Whatever we were running in LA, the profit it was going to the Contra-Revolution.
I'm very excited and honored to introduce, in my opinion, the most exciting and unusual speaker Brown has hosted since I have been a student here. Rick Ross, also known as Freeway Rick, received a life sentence in 1996 for building and presiding over the second most profitable drug empire in American history, second only to Al Capone's.
Thank you. Good luck. Thank you.
Wow. I don't know where to start. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, this is part of what Jesse Katz was talking about, and it's going to be revealed in my documentary that we just finished shooting. Should be airing around June, July. I'm really excited about that too. But when I was in jail, and I still have my life sentence, but what had happened is once I had learned how to read and I started studying the law, I knew I was going to get out. So when Jesse was talking to him, when he was reading that article to you, that was me and Jesse sitting down in the visiting room talking about what I was going to be doing once I got out of prison. And being here at Yale is part of that. I mean, at Brown, excuse me. Being here at Brown is part of that. When I was there, I saw that since I was such a critical part of creating the drug war, that now I could be a part of ending the drug war. And I knew that going around the schools and educating people, basically what I want to do is give you my insight. So when I wrote my autobiography, you're going to be able to get my autobiography, get in my shoes, and walk around and see exactly what I saw. When the writer who helped me finish up the book, Kathy Scott, she was the author of Tupac and Biggie, The Death of Tupac and Biggie. She wrote both of those books. She said that, Rick, you took me inside of the Nickerson Gardens. you walked me through the Jordan Downs, you took me to the jungle, and you took me to South Central Los Angeles, a place that I'd never been, and now I understand it better. And that's what I believe my goal in life is from here on out, is to basically just show people who have never had that experience what it's like, who they're dealing with, so that maybe you have a different understanding. Maybe you'll know that.
So what do you know about Danilo Blando?
I don't know.
Oh, come on, Ricky. Danilo's gonna testify against you tomorrow.
He's the witness they've been hiding. Man, ain't no way they flipped Danilo, man. Sit down Nah. and listen to what he has to say.
They didn't flip anyone. Blandon was working for the government the entire time.
You for real?
Yeah.
Look here, man, he was 1,000 times heavier than I'll ever be. I couldn't sell it fast enough to keep up with supply.
Slow down. You mean demand?
No, I mean supply. I was buying 100 kilos a week, selling $3 million a day, and still couldn't get rid of that inventory fast enough, man. It was raining coke. Allegedly, Ricky. Allegedly. Allegedly. Look here, man, I gave him $6 million a week, allegedly.
That's impossible.
Is it?
How do you sell that much cocaine on the street?
Look here, man, we used to cook it with baking soda. We called it Ready Rock. Powder was for rich folks. Look here, man, I was just the elf. Blandon was Santa Claus.